Hey, White Sox fans! It is your friend Brett Ballantini. I'm trying to avoid podcasts, but they sort of sneak up and they hit you in the back of the head, they knock you out, and then you wake up and you're in the middle of a podcast. So I've just woken up for podcast. Oh, what is it? 184. 184 of these Sox podcasts affiliated with Southside Sox, Sox Populi, places elsewhere. Um, and we're talking about Sox Fests. I won't be talking so much about it because I wasn't there. However, the good news is the other two people on your screen or that you will soon hear from on your podcast machine were there. Melissa Sage-Bollenbach for both days because she is a dedicated super fan. She's going to have a lot to talk about, including day two, where things took a stranger, I guess a little bit of a stranger, less fan-friendly turn. And Kristina Airdo, who was there for day one. They're representing Southside Sox and writing a piece summarizing day one of this Sox Fest. I guess we still call it Sox Fest, even though they've changed the venue, changed the nature of it to some degree. So thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Kristina, for being here. And it seems like overall a positive experience. So maybe let's start with the good of Sox Fest. To listeners and viewers, I should explain Melissa is a veteran of many Sox Fests, more than I've ever even been close to or even thought about or even cared about. Kristina, this is her first experience with Sox Fest. So we all have varying levels here. Melissa is the grizzled veteran of Sox Fest. I'm somewhere in the middle if I'm not trying to hawk a book or cover it for some outlet. And Kristina getting her first experience in this weird revamped, sort of delayed, we're never going to have a Sox Fest again, and now suddenly they have one again in the Sox Park area. So we're all sort of at different levels. I'll have less to say after this stupid extended intro, but again, Kristina, Melissa, sort of the positives coming out of it, whether it was something you saw or even maybe just how it's been covered or how the White Sox conveyed Sox Fest this time around.
Well, I'll jump right in and say that for me and my family in particular, I think the big win was the amount of interaction that you could have with the players and the staff and the higher ups in the White Sox hierarchy, and like being to prior Sox Fest before. Yeah, the interaction was you were in these big stalls waiting to get your autograph, and you got up to the line and they didn't want you taking pictures. You got up to the line, you gave your thing, this guy signed it, and then you moved along. So it was very much like more of a regimented process. Whereas this environment, I mean, they had the little autograph areas set up, but they also had backdrops like down in the main seating area that players would just go over to and then start, interacting with fans. And it was very much encouraged for you to like engage with them and have a conversation with them and take the photo and have the autograph. And it wasn't rushed. It wasn't like they were trying to like get through as many people as you possibly could, which is how I felt it used to be. It was like, we have all these people who have all these tickets and all these wristbands, and let's, speed get them through. And this was all about I feel like over the weekend, like I developed relationships with like some of the players and the players' parents and Will Venable. And so in that regards, I feel like it was a huge win.
Is that a consequence solely of fewer people, just the nature of this being more intimate? The audience for the White Sox has become more selective, as you might say, or was it really a bit of a thematic? Was it a little bit driven by the White Sox as well to try to change the nature of it? A little bit of both, or was it just a consequence of just fewer people?
I think it was a combination of both. I think they said there were 600 people on Friday and like 900 on Saturday. And while you could tell there were a few more people there on Saturday, it didn't feel like there were 300 more people there. And so I think because, yes, the crowds are smaller, so they didn't have, I think I remember when Bo Jackson came to Sox Fest, whenever that would have been, they had 500 wristbands for Bo Jackson. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just, it was insane. So I think between only having 600 people and then having the setup where the players were, walking over to these little backdrops, or like just walking through Sage was over looking at some of the merch or something, and Edgar Caro was just hanging out.
They're just like all over.
Yeah. And so he just walked up to him and he was like, shook his hand and was like, "Hey, can I take a picture with you?" Yeah, like never at the old Sox Fest would you even a prospect wouldn't be just hanging out over at the merch table, and looking at stuff and walking and interacting with fans. So I think it was definitely intentional in regards to the setup, but then also just as a consequence of there being significantly less people.
Yeah, 600 people sounds crazy. 600 people is like the amount of people who are in like the hotel restaurant at Texas Sox Fest. That's crazy. Yes. That's pretty. I mean, that's still weird to say that's intimate, but relatively speaking, yeah, you're going to get access there, especially because it wasn't like, okay, 5 players are going to be there because it's only 600. They're still at it. They had a pretty good roster and volume of people, so you are going to, that ratio right there is going to be like, yeah, you are going to sort of knock into somebody, or you're going to be in the restroom like, oh yeah, hey Harold, what's up, man?
Literally.
Okay, Kristina, different perspective. As Melissa outs herself as a super SoxFest fan by saying, whatever SoxFest that was, where Bo Jackson had 500 wristbands. But again, sort of a little more wide-eyed to this, not having had the experience before, but then also doing it sort of in a coverage standpoint and being there covering on the more intimate day. What were the things you were seeing with SoxFest in terms of the positivity, or maybe just the buzz of people and what people were talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I would say too, the fact that you said there were 600 people there is like almost surprising, just because it felt like it was fairly full, I would say, especially for the first like hour and a half, like when they were doing the panels and signing and everything like that. But like, yeah, it just felt like there was so much space. Like there was places to just kind of like walk around. Like there was places to take photos without ever feeling crowded. Like anytime I went to like the bathroom or like just to walk through the crowd or like go somewhere else into the place, like it just never felt like that crazy and hectic. So I think that while obviously is a consequence of them not being a good team or organization at this point in time, it also is like kind of is interesting. Like I think it kind of brings a more uniqueness to the event. I did really like that it was like in the neighborhood. I think that added a little bit, like a nice touch. They weren't going to sell out a massive convention space at the state of the team. It just probably isn't going to happen. I mean, there's plenty of crazies like, myself, Melissa, who like wanted to go, right? But I mean, otherwise, like I did enjoy that factor of that. I thought it was cool that it was like right down the street from the stadium. I would agree with Melissa though. The fact that the players were like just bopping all over the place, like, outside of the beginning when they were introducing stuff, like even when I got there pretty much a little after, like they were talking with all the media people and everything, like I still was able to kind of like bump into them, like chat with them a little bit in between while they were like talking to like people getting autographs, just like, small things, but they were like really approachable, which I thought was cool. I think the unique thing about this team is that they're all babies. Like they are so new to the league, to the team. Like, so I feel like that probably also factored into like crowd size too. Like no one knew their names. Like they probably needed to wear name tags at this point.
Yeah, really. That you could be sort of anonymous. I mean, other than the fact you're probably taller than the average guy or whatever, you probably actually look, I don't know how many different shapes of men were there, but I'm guessing, they were going to be the ones among the more cut.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Like, are you a player? So
towering over me, that's for sure.
Now tell me this, Kristina, because we talked just very briefly in you going into it, it related a little bit of my experience where, initially that the very start of it was sort of this, salon type of atmosphere where, the players were sort of milling about, but it really was sort of media cordoned. When you first got there, I mean, was this a matter of, was there any segmentation where you had access to players, or were you just sort of in the mix, pretty much rubbing elbows with Melissa? I assume there was a little bit of exclusivity, for media, but I imagine the line was a little bit more blurred than it's maybe been in the past.
Yeah, I think like definitely having like VIP, I think my privileges were not that far off of you, but like, for example, like when Burley went to go and like talk with all the media teams, like, we all went and they were like setting it up and man, everyone is so ready with their mics. It's so funny. Like, how they just swarm. But like I was able to go and like access over there, whereas like there might have been a couple people like still in the area, but like it was kind of more like stationed off where no one really could get to Mark Burley at that time. So like stuff like that, or like just being able to freely go about like upstairs into like where they did have like the VIP section in the area and stuff, whereas like most other people were getting stopped. But like I had a credential kind of similar to Melissa's, the only mine just said media like on it at the bottom. But yeah, I mean, just got like access to go wherever. And like there was the balcony part that had like VIP areas up there too, which like was kind of nice just to go get some photos and also just kind of see like other players. You can just like look over and like Jerry Reinsdorf is sitting over there. And you're like, he's not showing his face, but he's over there. He's like,
I wonder
if the home improvement guy like over the fence, like.
They had that one, like where Jerry was and like Chuck, and like I wonder if you could have gotten in there.
I know, right? And been like, hey, so Jerry, what's going on here? Did you sell yet?
Oh man, that would have been something. Hey, yeah, one of the first times I've been alive, I never even knew. Yeah, of course, I didn't have anybody to train me, so yeah, I didn't even know protocol. One of the first times I was in the locker room, the first time I was ever in the Sox locker room was 2005, and I remember just plopping down in a chair. Like one of the players' chair, which of course you're not supposed to do. I'm like, that's an open chair. What's big deal? I plopped on a chair and just crashed next to Jermaine Dye. He looks at me like, "What are you doing?" But he was polite enough, and of course nobody actually said, "Dude, no,
don't do that." That's so.
It's an open chair. You're not even supposed to look at it. But yeah, I'm just picturing you just like crashing next to Jerry, like, hey, what's up, man? What's it looking like? Hey, how about the team?
Pretend like you're supposed to be there, maybe.
Yeah, right. He'll be like, I know I'm getting older. Is this person related to me? Who is this person? Nice to see you. Looking at your past, Kristina. Do I have a relative? Do I have a niece named Kristina?
As they're calling security.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's frantically hitting his button that he just walks around with.
She gets us revoked for the life.
Forever.
For Black Another thing I thought of, not to inject more from 15 years ago, but the last one I covered, I think it was bitterly cold Palmer House Hilton. Maybe? And the thing I remember, it's sort of bittersweet. At the time, I didn't know it, because when we were in that time that I was talking about a little bit with Kristina, sort of the media special. I think the big attraction was Paul Konerko at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe he had just signed an extension or something. But Ozzy and Ken are like just sitting and they're like, shooting it together, and they're laughing, and they're, of course, this is the season. This is before 2011. This is the season where it all went bad. And it turned out later in that day that they announced they were picking up his option early. It was supposed to be some big, compliment to Ozzy that, even though, you don't even have to manage the season, we're picking you up for next year. And it's such a an era of good feeling between them. So yeah, you look back now, it's sort of bittersweet because it's like, they were actually still sort of buddies, and maybe they are again now, but certainly as that season went on and as that summer went on, they were not buddies whatsoever. Big power struggle to come, but that's one memory I had. Anyway, who cares about my memories? Melissa in particular, but Kristina as well. The nature of the events, I think maybe even Melissa pointed out in her story, or certainly in talking together leading up to this, less sort of scheduled, a little bit more. I mean, again, the nature of it, fewer people, only 2 days. We're trying to pack a little bit more in, but not to the extent where they were just piling events. So there's less of the forum type of approach, less choice, I want to say, between like, I don't know, 3 stages, maybe you just had 2. But how did that sort of affect the scope of it? I imagine it sort of lends some intimacy because, you can't split off from your family and go see the thing you want to see. I mean, you're pretty much going to the things that are available to you, but how did the nature of that maybe sort of feel different from the past?
So I liked it and I didn't. So I liked it in that, yes, there were not like so many different things that you were like, well, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. You really had like, it was in blocks. You had like this block and this block. In this block, it was like the back to back seminars or panel discussions, and then the other block was the meet and greets, is what they call them. They were autograph sessions or meet and greets. So for the VIPs, our meet and greet area was right up in the balcony above the stage. So we could do our meet and greets and hear and see what was going on stage. So that was a win. But for people who had general admission passes, if you wanted to do the meet and greets, you completely missed the panels. You had no option to do, and there wasn't like a repeat either. It wasn't like we're going to do the State of the Sox at 6 and then we'll do it again at 6:30, so that if you were getting a meet and greet, you could then come and watch the panel and kind of swap. Like I feel like you kind of used to be able to do in the old format, like, or at least you got to see some panels. Because if you were just there to meet and greet the players, that's all you got to do. You didn't get to see anything else. Where my family, we like to do both. We like to see the panels and the questions that are asked, and then also like to do meet and greets. So for us, it was good that we had both days and we had the VIP passes because we got all kind of the best of both worlds. But I feel like with the general admission people, you either got one or you got the other.
Yeah. Well, and not to sound too bourgeoisie here, but I mean, there does need to be a difference between the two, because if the people who are buying the basic ticket get everything, well, then nobody's going to want to do that. So, I mean, it is good that you felt that you got enormous value, and it does make sense, because if you had to choose, especially with the 2024, 2025 White Sox, I'm not sure you'd want to go see them talking about anything on the stage. You might want to meet a player, because who cares, and then you're going to like have to expose yourself to, Schifrin or whatever. You're probably going to want to avoid that. So, yeah, it's good that at least the top tier ticket, the people who really did devote themselves and make a commitment to SoxFest, are getting something where you sort of couldn't lose. I mean, and that does sound sort of like a cool option where it's like, you got both. You really didn't have to choose.
But it's like, so, and then the other thing, I guess, is that if you were a VIP, you got what I would call the marquee players in your meet and greet. Like Mark Burley, the only people who met Mark Burley were the people on Friday who had the VIP passes. Right. So if you didn't have a VIP pass and you come on Friday, you were SOL when it came to meeting Mark Burley. So it's good that we paid all the extra money for Sunday.
Right. And if you were thirsty, then he helped you out a little bit there too, and made himself a further folk hero. Excellent tweet by Southside Sox, not me, by Southside Sox there, saying, if that's not cause to get that guy. Listen, come on. He's a guy. You want those guys in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, of course, if he was a jerk, he would still be worthy of the Hall of Fame, but it's a lot nicer to have a guy worthy of the Hall of Fame who's also just a cool guy. You know, adopts dogs, for goodness sake. Hunts, but adopts dogs. Well, we like the adopting dog part. Kristina, from your perspective, again, sort of coming in, newer to this, did it feel like the stage stuff, had value and had merit? Because I know there's probably some debate, and of course there was rounds. We'll get to it in the second half. The chanting, we could not avoid chanting in this SoxFest, and maybe some negativity where I don't know, was it Grandpa Steve or Papa Steve had to take over and steal the microphone to calm everybody down. But at least certainly day one, did it feel like there was value beyond, there was value to going to SoxFest beyond just maybe getting to run into Mark Burley or get a free beer from him or something? Did there seem like the stage brought some value?
Yes, I would say the first half of the evening brought a solid amount of value. First of all, Len Casper in his band is so cool. That was really, I think, just a great intro, to the whole evening while people are kind of milling about, getting in situated and everything. But I did think that it's the 20th anniversary, of course, of 2005 World Series. So I think it was a good homage to that. Obviously, we've had so much BS since then. So it's not sour, you know what I mean? But it was more refreshing than to just focus on how horrible everything else was. Yeah. And if we just had to listen to Chris Getz on stage for an hour, spewing nothing, you know what I mean? So I think that having those guys up there, it was fun. They were telling stories, getting drunk in the locker room, during the whole playoff run, and wanting to finish out games and bitching at Ozzy about it, stuff like that. So it was just cool to kind of hear their perspectives and little tidbits. And then Harold Baines was randomly with the 2005 team, which was awesome to have him there with the perspective. But it's just so funny because it was world champs, and then like also Harold Baines, like
Yeah.
kind of
He's like first base coach. I don't know if he was bench coach.
like,
I mean, he was a coach, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, come on.
I love it though. It's great though. Just to
Well,
kind of
he's so chatty.
He is,
Kristina.
I
He
know,
just
I
wants
love
to
it.
wedge his way into all the seminars. You know,
He did have like 2 complete sentences though.
right. I know.
It was good.
I was dying. I was like, everyone's just like talking and telling stories, and like Freddie Garcia constantly has something to say, and Harold Baines had maybe said like one thing like for the first 20 minutes, but
I don't know how many times covering the team. He was on the coaching staff when I covered the team. I wanted to loop him in, and I just wanted to like shoot the breeze with him. How many times I tried to do like somebody like Herm Schneider would talk to me for like an hour. Don Cooper followed me back to the hotel.
Oh my God, Don Cooper.
Harold was like basically maybe the 2 complete sentences. That was probably the most I ever got. I mean, that one was a very easy, just write it down. No recorder necessary for Harold. I mean, what was said probably, but bless him. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Harold,
it was fun to have him up there.
We love Harold.
But I thought that was cool. So they and then they announced Burley's statue, which was probably the highlight I think of the entire evening, probably the whole weekend, if not like it's certainly up there. I think that got fans really excited. Everyone loves Burley. He's a fan favorite. Kind of like an easy win for the White Sox in that realm. You know what I mean? So like for a fan base that's so pissed off at you, like hell yeah, let's give Mark Burley a statue. Like,
how much were the White Sox like itching to announce? I mean, this couldn't have been like a last weekend idea. So I mean, how long? I mean, through these terrible seasons and terrible seasons to come. Let's not forget that part. Let's not bury that lead. That they just want to just trot that out there just to take the heat off, like, hire Tony Lewis, Burley statue.
Right. Well, Burley said Jerry
Burley statue.
Burley said Jerry called him last summer. So literally it was during this entire shit show. He's like, we need a plan B, Chris. Like,
who can do a statue? Joe Creedy, you want a statue? Yeah, no, I mean, believe me, that's probably still to come. But yeah, Burley, come on, no brainer. And let's be honest, Kristina, if this was the 17th anniversary, if this was the 6th anniversary, if this was the 34th anniversary, they'd be smart, this SoxFest, to just play up the world champs, no matter how contrived, because exactly what you said, you just need a breath, you need a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah. I think being the 20th anniversary is like saving them a little bit, because like you gives them an excuse to like make this documentary that like people will be interested in watching. And like I know, and I mentioned this in the article, like I know we're like just really keep like beating the dead horse of the 2005 championship, but like there's not much else. So like, am I going to watch it? Yes. Am I also just like, holy crap, can we do this again? So like we can actually experience joy? Yes.
I think we see 2005 White Sox now beginning to meld with 1985 Bears, and that has been confirmed by that promotion where there's actually literally like a Ditka sweater, sweater vest.
I think I have it here.
We are definitely now the 85 Bears, but at this point, I mean, we got to take it. We can't argue. Now, okay, before we, there it is.
Sort of see it. It's blurry, but
before we take a break and head into maybe some of the stuff that was beyond the fact that the team exists and the team will play a 2025 season, because that's as negative as you can get. Let's end the first half on a higher note, because I have to say, I think I know the answer here. So this is a super leading question to you both. But when you think about it, going into Sox Fest, both of you, even before you knew you'd be covering Kristina, do you think there's any way, even for any of the pratfalls of this past weekend, that it could possibly have gone actually as well as it did?
I mean, I thought it would have been a lot more negativity, like the stuff that happened on Saturday with like the chanting and everything. I felt like we would have seen more of that. But I thought people were fairly well behaved for like an organization that hasn't given them a reason to be. But I thought it went really well for like what I expected it to just be middle of the road, like not really sure what to expect because I didn't know the previous format. I mean, I understood the previous format, but I haven't ever been. But I think overall, like I would say it went well for them.
Melissa, are the White Sox just pleased as punch, fat and sassy about how well this went for them?
Yeah, I think they probably are. I don't think they've read my article yet, but I'm going to send it to them. They're going to read it. One way or the other. I'm sending it to somebody.
Yeah. By the way, White Sox, feel free to just, I mean, whether it's just like a free ticket or something. I mean, you want to talk about doing fan customer research for you. I mean, I'm not, yeah, okay. I toot our own horns, all the time. I hope that's what I'm supposed to do. But come on, down to a poll, down to the pluses and minuses. There's no way any of your moles in the crowd there could have done any better job than Melissa did in that article. So please, just give her a pat on the hiney or something. Something, because come on, she did your Oppo research for you, and there's a lot to take away from that, good and bad. And but again, from the White Sox perspective, I mean, could this have really gone any better? And I know there were. I mean, we're gonna talk about it, but of course there were some negatives. They're going to have to be. We're talking about the 2025 White Sox coming off of 2024. It has to be negative to some degree, but this largely avoided, whether it's a 20th anniversary or not. This largely sidestepped that.
Yeah, and I mean, another part of the event was like I did meet a lot of White Sox fans, just like interacting, whether you were like sitting in the VIP area or downstairs, during the panels or waiting in line for the autographs. Like I was just really trying to be social and talk to people and see how they felt about it. And Friday definitely got a lot more. This has been great. I've had a wonderful experience. I've loved the vibe. And that was not quite the case on Saturday. So, I mean, I think my dog has a lovely cough. That's what you're hearing in the back. That, if they're being truly objective about it, I think Friday was a huge win. Mm-hmm. And Saturday, some of the flaws I think some of the pimples showed up a little bit more. In that, but there were things they definitely could have done. They could have revealed a jersey, an alternate jersey, based on one of the 125-year anniversary. They could have made that kind of a big thing on Saturday, or announced Ozzy's number being retired or something. Like, I feel like it was like Friday was like all or nothing. It was great. And then Saturday it was kind of like, you were hoping that you really remember about the Burley statue and that he was here.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Saturday didn't quite have that same vibe. So overall, yes, but Saturday kind of put a little bit of a kink into it, I think.
But Melissa, we still have February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, even technically October to get through. So I can't blame them for keeping a couple things in the duffel bag, because we're going to be talking off the edge like in April.
Yeah, they gave you the promos, okay? So you can stick with that.
Right. And Kristina, I'll pop this back to you. But I mean, from what Melissa revealed about just sort of the capacity, to me, I guess I'm sort of envisioning, and you're talking about sort of getting to know fans. It's almost like going to a concert at United Center. You're still going to talk to people you're around. You're going to going to a concert there, or Metro. I mean, you're going to be. It's a more intimate thing. You're standing in line. You're going to sort of chat a little bit more with people versus this sort of like cattle car thing. Mm-hmm. And did that have a little bit of a difference in the vibe, particularly for you, Melissa? But I mean, did you get the sense, Kristina, as well, that the interaction was able to be there, just because of the sort of intimate nature of it, the selective audience of the White Sox?
Definitely. I think that it was easy to engage with really anyone around you. Like, even the media section was like hardly, I mean, like Melissa saw, it was like just behind this little, like, it's just like a small little area kind of cordoned off, but like not really. It was really accessible. So like I could just go pop out, take pictures, like interact with people and stuff like that. So I thought that was like cool and unique. And the other thing too is, like, I know we'll probably talk about like stuff later, but they did interact with the fans a lot, like bringing some people up on stage, including Melissa, one of them being one of them. But it was just like cool to kind of see the fans that did go up, like play games and interact with the players and kind of like see their personality and everything. So I think that format, definitely we were able to see like more of the players like just as they are. And I thought that was just like kind of cool. You wouldn't get that, I don't think, in a really large convention space where there's so many people milling about and like schedules and everything like that.
Yeah, just the echoes alone of few people in a big convention center would have been probably sort of embarrassing. What? I can't hear you. My voice is bouncing off the wall. All right, let's wind up this first half. Take a break. a few commercial messages for you to listen to. Appreciate you doing it. We're doing fewer podcasts in the off season. Oh, geez, I don't know. What's the reason? Is it not obvious? But of course, we'll be ramping up more of them. But, in particular, please be patient. Listen to a couple messages because, we need you to. And I'm sure whatever's being sold to you is just really high quality stuff. It's probably not like Bitcoin or some sort of crap or gambling. Oh, probably never any gambling ads on Sox Populi podcast, right? So anyway, hold tight, a minute or two. We'll be back to talk. I don't know if you want to hear, if you've tuned in for negativity, maybe you'll hear a couple things that are a little negative in the second half because we'll talk about some of the stuff that didn't quite work out too well with SoxFest in the second half. Hang with us. Hey, White Sox fans, my name is Brett Ballantini. Why am I here? I don't know. I didn't go to SoxFest, but I'm here. Somehow I'm managing to squeeze in a lot of words. Why do I do that? I've got a problem. I'm sorry. But podcast hosts are supposed to do that, I suppose. I'm here with Kristina Airdo, who covered it. A shout out to Sheena Quinn at the Sox, who sort of was our main liaison to sort of get us in there. Appreciate the White Sox giving us a shot to go there and cover. And Kristina, of course, wrote a piece for Friday, encapsulating Friday night. Great piece on Southside Sox. If you haven't read it, okay, pause the podcast, go read it, and then come on back because the good stuff is coming. And Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, who did not just get to cover. Melissa's saying, boy, this was sort of dumb of me. If I knew, I could have just gone and covered and saved the scratch. Oh, man. Well, she's made a note for next year, and perhaps her name goes to the front of the list as a SoxFest, but she is a SoxFest veteran. She brings more experience with SoxFest than any of us, certainly more than Kristina and me combined, weighing in on the pros in the first half. And now in the second half, we're going to talk about maybe a few things that didn't work. I just was like going crazy hyping. So Sox, don't get mad at me. I'm just hyping you guys saying this went better than anybody could have ever possibly hoped. But no, there were some cracks. Certainly second day that Melissa was there for and Kristina wasn't. But tell me, both of you, some things that maybe didn't quite work out so well or that you'd like to see done differently or had been done differently in the past.
I want to hear from Melissa about everything that happened on like Saturday because when I was reading it, I was like, "Oh God!" She said Schriffen deviated off the path. I was like, "What did he say?"
The one thing they told him not to do. They probably told him that not to do that in April. The one thing they're still telling him not to do, and he did. Bless you, John.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, so I'll start with Friday and something that Kristina pointed out in her article, which I thought was key, and actually. It was so funny because my husband and I were talking about it in the balcony and like almost exactly how we were thinking about it is you wrote about it. But in the State of the Sox one with Chris Getz and Will Venable up there talking about, this year's team and last year's team and the disaster that's been the last 3 years. In the past, in the old White Sox format, like that forum was one of the most popular ones in the whole weekend. Like, it would be packed. There would be people standing room only. I mean, if you didn't get in there, a significant amount of time before it started, you were definitely standing. And then it was, it was in a hotel or convention center or whatever. So the stage wasn't super elevated from the fans, just a little bit. And then, you had your rope blocked off and then all the fans. So it felt a little bit more intimate than this did because the huge stage is really elevated in the Remova. So they're way back sitting on stage. We're kind of down in the pit. You have the echoes and everything. And then the key part missing is that fans used to be able to, of course, they started out and they'd talk. And then you had the mic and fans would line up behind the mic and then just shoot questions. And I think it served a really solid purpose in letting fans feel like they were being heard. Now, they didn't care. Kenny and Rick and Jerry and whoever didn't give a crap what we were saying, but people at least felt the opportunity to go up there and be like, what the hell were you thinking? And then Kenny Williams, they used to get kind of contentious times.
Yeah, he doesn't back down.
Yeah, like he didn't back down. So, it was kind of showy and whatever. Yeah. But still, it was that opportunity to be like, okay, I could kind of yell at you and tell you how I feel, but now I feel better about it. Yeah. Then I can go on with my fandom, where is how this setup was. It felt very much just boring. Yeah. And Kristina pointed out, like, people were like talking, like nobody was even paying attention. And I was I was like, oh my gosh, this is like this is a huge hit. It's a huge miss. And so
that's sort of embarrassing. I mean, 121 losses,
So embarrassing.
okay, but I mean, that's weird because you are really trying to, I mean, if nothing else, you get a question about 2024, you're going to try to steer it to 2025. So it's your opportunity to do some spin, and I'm sorry, that is sort of their job. So, Kristina, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, same reaction. I thought it was funny too from the media perspective, because as soon as like the 2005 portion ended and Burley was going to go like talk to cameras and everything, everyone hightailed it to do that. No one gave a damn about what was happening on the stage. And by the time like we did get back down, I mean, it was like at least 35 minutes into the thing where they were probably going to be wrapping up. And I just like, you could hardly even hear what they were saying because no one was paying any attention to them. Like, it was literally just Chris Getz, Will Venable, and Len Casper, and no one cared at all. You have the new coach of the team. Like, people are interested in like what he has to say, but no one cared about anything that Chris had to say. So no one was paying any attention. I would say it's a little embarrassing for sure. There was definitely like the player signings and everything else happening, which is simply just more interesting than what's happening on the stage. Like, they were taking questions. Were they questions that were submitted, I think, by fans? Well, it's real. They're all vetted. So like,
where?
Questions. Yeah, where
did they come from? Like, we didn't, when we walked in, they didn't say, here, fill out these index cards.
Right.
We're gonna. So I have no idea where these season ticket holders got an email that said,
like,
hey,
he started around anything. Like, I listened to like one. Sorry,
they were softball,
but it was
questions.
like nothing.
Yeah.
No fictional city, and no fictional city has to be attached to them. So it's not even as exposed as a mailbag that might not be authentic, because it's like, wait a minute, there's no town in Indiana called Indianapolis. So they could get away with it. This is a good seg, Melissa, because they did the same sort of thing Saturday, and there was a notably absent key figure on Saturday, which really has got to gut the value of a state of the Sox, when the guy who's putting the team together, who seems to selectively claim ownership and sort of like claim, was I even an employee of the White Sox when this horror began? It's sort of a little strange that maybe that person wasn't there. Is that true? Please confirm for me. Is that true? I think I remember from your article.
Yeah. So on Friday, I think too, they had the benefit of, they had just announced all the Burley stuff. So everybody's like, woohoo, I'm so happy. I don't care about the rest of this stuff.
I'll get Chris Getz's autograph. Sure.
Saturday, they did not have the benefit of that. And so you had 300 more people. Overall, Saturday was a little bit more disorganized, so people were a little frustrated. I think there had been signage on Friday, like everywhere. Like, here's the MVP, or if you have the VIP pass, here's who's signing, and this is what time, and then this is what time, because you had two different spots. And then in the general admission area, you had the signs. You knew what was going on, so you could kind of assess when you walked in and be like, okay, so I'm going to do this at this time, this at this time, this at this time. Well, there was no signage anywhere. You didn't know who was signing where, when. And so people were pretty frustrated about that. Not just myself, but other people that I was talking to. And then you didn't have all the Burley stuff. So when you had the State of the Sox panel on Saturday, and Chris Getz was missing, unless I'm totally tuned out and missed it, it didn't, like Gene Hunter and nobody said, oh, and Chris got called away in a family emergency, or Chris is making deals, or whatever. It was
he's delayed in Mississippi. Oh, we used that one already.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. He just, like, they had the panel up there, and they're like, oh, and this is, Gene Watson, and this is Steve Stone, and whatever, and you're like, somebody's missing here. No Chris Getz. And then, of course, so they start with the softball questions and whatever, and the crowd, you can hear, is kind of starting to rumble and get a little rowdy. And then, of course, Jerry shows up in the little balcony area, and somebody spotted him.
Oh, no.
Started the chants to sell the team, quickly extinguished by ushers who like sprinted to the people that they could see that were standing up and really like getting into it. Oh, shut them down pretty quickly. I was I couldn't get my phone fast enough. Like, I had my phone and I was like, crap, I gotta record this. By the time I recorded it, was all like, And then after that, then that's when Shriffen decided to kind of go off script, and he's like, "Oh, we're just gonna go ahead, and this guy over here clearly wants to ask something or say something." So he
Oh my God.
goes over to the guy. The guy is shouting because it's so you have to, because the distance between the stage and where he was. So the guy's shouting, but he doesn't. But Shriffen doesn't give him the microphone to be like, "Here, what do you say, buddy?" So the guy's shouting. Shriffen looks like a deer in headlights, like, "Oh shit, what do I do with this?" Does not do anything with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And walks across the stage, basically like, "Yeah, we're just not going to deal with that." Walks across the stage, gets a question from somebody else, like summarizes that guy's question, and then answers it. And then Steve Stone jumps in and is like lecturing us about patience and
Oh my God.
communication with grandparents and parents with children. It's the same thing. I'm looking at each other. I'm like, you're telling me that how I communicate with my kids is how the coaches are going to communicate with these adult professional. It was so bizarre. And it just kind of imploded from that point, and people were just done with it. And it ended like 13 minutes early.
Yeah.
Oh my
It
God.
was supposed to go until 10 till, and they shut it down 13 minutes early. And we were all like, what just happened?
Wow.
I mean, not to be rude. I mean, John Schifrin is not like a government employee where we're supposed to like know salary or whatever. But how little must John be getting paid for him not to have already talked himself into getting fired like a dozen times already? He must be doing this almost like gratis to continue to make these. I mean, literally they said, "John, you're the MC. Here is your list. Here's the list of questions. They're nothing questions. You're not even supposed to have. You don't even have to like ask them because." Guts is just going to say, blah, 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 whatever. Or Steve Stone, GM for a day, is going to he's just going to answer it, and it's going to be platitudes. And then, he decides to, Hawk, you might say, "Oh yeah, okay, and he's sort of like earned the right to have his all his, by the end, even all his stupid opinions that grated on all of us. But I mean, this guy stays new to the team. He had a very rough year. No leeway, and there's nothing granted by fans. There's no section of fans that's like, "Yeah, I want John to go off script. Classic John." So strange.
I will give him tons of credit because all weekend he was everywhere. I mean, he was interactive.
He is, and that's the best thing about him. He really, he's a man of the people. Bless him for that, because you need that.
Yes. And so I think what he was trying to do, because this guy clearly was very upset, he was trying to give him the opportunity to feel like he had a voice. But then by not telling us what he said, he could have even said, our friend Chuck here, clearly very frustrated. And I understand, you know what I mean? He could have just kind of, it was just like, nope, we're just moving on. Forget about it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Chuck's feeling like when the score kept dogging me, and man, I was so angry. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can, you got to be a little quick with that too. And I mean, I guess he's still learning, even though he's got one of the choice 30 gigs in the world.
That is so brutal. Did the panel end with Steve Stone blocking everybody on Twitter? That is so awkward.
Yeah, it ended with him and was it him and Shriffen? Yes, like at the end, like everybody else left and him, they came to the front of the stage, and Steve was doing his little lecture thing, and then they transitioned into the Era's chat, which also nobody listened to because I think people were super pissed by then.
Right.
And I don't give a shit what this guy's saying.
Yeah. I'm one of the blocks, so I can't really keep up with Steve. Has Steve moved over to Blue Sky yet just to block people? Is he done? Has he made that move yet? Or is he
not yet?
Is that his big reveal for June when we're all distracted by the team that's 5-55? Then he'll do that to just take some heat off, maybe. Because that would be what Grandpa would do anyway.
Oh man.
Oh, it was a hoot, let me tell you.
So Melissa and Kristina Wayne as well, given that you are sort of by proxy getting enough absorption of how Saturday went, and that Friday and Saturday balance, obviously Friday a lot for good reason, of course. It's sort of the signaling of the end of winter, even though good luck to you two up there ending winter anytime before opening day, probably including opening day. But I mean, of course, it's this sort of theoretical, end of winter, and now we're pointing toward baseball. So of course, Friday is going to just by nature are going to be, the happier time. Maybe you see, maybe you even see an old friend, they're even among the 600. And obviously Saturday a little rougher, but I mean, on the whole, it still tilts positively, for you beyond all sort of the the selfish things you could say, like, I had this access and we got to meet and we got to go on stage, just as the average person there, you feel it balanced out, still a net positive.
It would be interesting to talk to people who only went to Saturday. Because I think for me overall, I absolutely think it was a win. And I haven't even talked about the after party, the hour after party. I do definitely want to mention that. And so to talk to people who just went to Friday, like had general admission passes and just went to Friday, or even had VIP passes and just went to Friday, because I think that was different too. Because I would say, yes, it was an overall win, but I'm not sure exactly how people who just went Saturday, and I didn't talk to anybody who just went on Saturday about how they felt about it. So, yeah.
Christine, go ahead.
Just kind of looking at it from an outsider's perspective for not going, I feel like it seems like Saturday would almost like skew it enough for like, I think from the White Sox perspective to be like, well, that was kind of a shit show, but we probably anticipated that. Like, so like, really it's a win because it wasn't that bad. Like, I do think that they could have done, like Melissa said earlier, something more on Saturday to like create more of buzz around something. Cause like talking to people who all they do is like feed you non-answers for the most part, because they're not necessarily in charge of things, like it doesn't really helpful. So that's why the crowd gets feisty and frustrated, because it's just the same regurgitation of nothingness that is just repeated. I think that too on Friday, that like the first half of it was like really great, and then it was kind of just like trailed off like a little bit. Like I noticed it was not nearly as crowded at like 8:30 as it was. And granted, it was only going until like 9 or so. But like you can only do so much like on stage with the players at a certain point. And I don't know, I feel like they maybe just like ran out of things to do in a way. But like, yeah, I mean, I've said my experience was positive from like definitely the perspective that I had. And I was only there on Friday. So like, I didn't really witness anything that was like Melissa did, but I feel like they definitely have improvements that they can make, just because when I did get there slightly later than like other media people did, like the line like that you had mentioned in your article too, Melissa, and how people were waiting, like they were doing that black carpet thing. But I was like, how the hell is anyone seeing any of this? Because like I'm 5'1", so I was in the back just trying to get around the room. But I'm like, how is anyone seeing anything that's over there that is like my height or even, shorter than like 6 feet tall? Because it just seemed really kind of disorganized up there. And I don't necessarily know where the VIP like started and ended, but it seemed like people were there for that. And it was just like kind of chaotic.
Yeah, Melissa, I want to get to your volume thoughts and also after party thoughts. But first, I'm going to inject again, because again, because I'm a White Sox super fan and nothing they do is bad in my eyes. So I'm going to be real positive on it again. But I mean, given how badly they've even just the fact they haven't had these for a while, given how badly they step in things. I mean, look, they felt so chuffed by Friday that they just let that I don't want to know how to pronounce his name, Karinchak, whatever, that reliever, the new Clevenger, whatever. I mean, okay, it's not in any way to compare the two, but I mean, okay, in that mold. They just let that signing down. I mean, you don't want to just eat that until like the next Monday. I'm not sure why. So they were feeling pretty good. But seriously, though, given what a car crash, I mean, people get shot in the park. So, I mean, just actually, given that the worst gaffe was, Schifrin, I don't know, going off script or, whatever. I mean, or it being really cold in a certain spot, or, for anyone in any way height challenged, maybe struggling a bit and only having to listen to the booming audio and not being able to see anything. I mean, really, perspective-wise, it obviously could have gone. In the back of your head, you had to think, okay, what's coming? Is Jerry just going to drop while he's in the balcony? What is going to happen here that's really going to be very White Sox? And I hate saying that because that's always like Cubs talk, the lovable loser stuff. But I mean, yeah, now it's us. And then you really, both of you had to think in the back of your head, okay, something weird's going to go badly wrong here, even in this great PR thing.
I thought people were going to be way like bitchier in the crowd, like, you know what I mean? But like no one cared. no one cared that Chris Guts was saying anything at all. Like literally no one was listening. Everyone was worried
That's
about
probably the
everything else.
recommended approach, but
Yeah, exactly. Like he was probably so blessed for that. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. They could do better for sure next year, but I think given everything, probably could have gone worse. But I don't know what's up with your communication and everything. Like the signage stuff feels pretty easy. Why did you remove anything from where it was in the first place? Like that kind of stuff. But
they're out of practice. They weren't
Yeah.
stocked up on that poster board the way they had been when they were doing it every year. Now they're just like, where's the poster board? Nobody had any. And there's no dollar store nearby. Melissa, you mentioned you want to mention it. So obviously the plus
after
of
party.
the party, and then the negative of the fact that you really were like at a concert, even though it was a White Sox promo event.
Yeah. So it was way too loud. Like the whole
after party was?
No, just I think the event itself, like
even
the first hour when they had the bands playing either night, you literally had to scream at people.
Yeah, it was loud.
I talked to a lot of fans who said, yes, like I get the vibe they're going for. They want it to be lively and fun, but also I don't think like it needs to be where our Apple Watches are going off and like, it's too loud. You're gonna lose your hearing. But yeah, so yes, they need to do something. And because it's a theater and it echoes, and it then also made it hard to hear with the microphones and stuff. So I think they need to work on that too. But so the after party, probably the best thing of the whole weekend. So that was, you could have a VIP pass and do the after party, or you could have general admission and do the after party. It was just, I shouldn't say just, it was $100 plus the fees add on to whatever ticket you purchased. So we were like, yeah, we don't need to go both nights. So we just chose Friday night. And back in the old White Sox days, they had an after party, but it was free and it was like part of the just general event. And so kind of what my husband and I had in our mind was what that used to be, which was like a ballroom with the players like roped off,
right.
Some bowls of popcorn, and like the players on stage playing like bingo or something.
Yeah,
you know,
people
like,
who just didn't want to leave.
Yeah,
okay, we'll
exactly. And so that's kind of what we had. We didn't have super high expectations. Completely blown away and impressed by what they did. They turned one of the little loft areas into kind of an after party bar type of atmosphere with the lights and a DJ. They had the bar. It was, you had to pay, but they had appetizers that they were bringing around, which was part of your ticket. And then like, little high top tables set all around the room, and the players were just hanging out. Like they were just hanging out the little top tables, and Will Venable was wandering around, and you literally just walked up and joined the table, and you were like, hey guys, and had conversations with them and met their families, and asked for pictures. And Freddie Garcia and Jose Contreras were there, and like Freddie was like totally scoping out girls. It was really funny. He was giving his world. Him and Jose were actually giving their World Series rings to cute girls to like take pictures with and stuff. And so it was almost surreal. Like Sage just afterwards, my son, he was just like, did I really just like spend an hour just like hanging out with like 15-minute conversation with Will Venable, where Will's asking him about where he goes to college and what he wants to do, and like super genuine type of questioning, not just like, oh my God, I have to stand here and talk to this family for 15 minutes. Like he wanted to get to know, like, who are my fans? What kind of fan base do I have? And so that was a huge win. So they should definitely keep that going, and props to how they planned it and how they approached it with the players, because they were all super accessible, super nice. And it was a lot of fun.
And Jose Contreras and Freddie Garcia will just show up. You don't have to pay them. They'll just show up because they want to be there. Okay, I get it.
Mark Burley was not there. No. Or Steve Stone. Papa Stone was probably in bed. Mark Burley was like, yeah, what I paid for, I'm out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I curse these podcasts before we go on air by always saying they're going to be short, and that is the curse. I'll learn at some point to stop doing that, because then I don't have to keep my wonderful guests for as long. But it's been a fun conversation with Melissa, Sage-Bollenbach, and Kristina Airdo. This wraps up another edition of Ladies Night. Now, always am threatening that I'm going to take
Thanks for
that over.
joining, Brett.
But I
Yeah.
remembered exactly. How did
Our
I get
special
here?
guest.
The hair used to be longer. No, but yeah, thanks for joining another Sox Populi. Listen, we have no choice. I mean, I made a joke, if you want to believe it was a joke, that I get hit on the head. And then when I wake up, I find myself on a podcast because I really, let's face it, I want to lay down and avoid them. I don't want to have to be hosting any White Sox podcast because of the White Sox. They lost 121 games, and I don't know that they won't lose 121 in 2025. But the thing is, we're a White Sox coverage site. We do have to sort of do it. So I guess someone is going to be employed around here to keep clocking me on the head. So I keep hosting these podcasts. Melissa is a great trooper. She shows up for far too many of them. Kristina, now we will guilt into doing more and more.
Yep.
As she is a key portion
Remember
of our coverage team.
that press pass you got, Kristina?
Exactly. You get that press pass, and you decide whether or not you want to show up on the next podcast. But we will probably start, I don't know, weekly. I don't want to commit to anything, but yeah, we'll probably start really ramping up, given the fact that it is 2025 and there is, unfortunately, a 2025 season to be played, and the White Sox will try to lose fewer than 121 games. I'm a little skeptical, but we'll talk about that in future podcasts because this is the era of good feeling. It began at the start of this podcast, and now some hour later, it is ending. Because guess what? We have to face up to what is a 2025 team that is going to be hopefully full of promise, but I don't know that that's going to come with wins. Anyhow, we will discuss that. We're just going to table that. Any weird acquisitions or any weirdness that happens in the intervening week, maybe a week or so from now, we'll have another one. I guess it'll be 185, and I'll say, my goodness, can you believe it's been 185? And then 186. Can you believe it's been 186? And then at some point, they'll just commit me. And we will call Melissa up from Ladies Night, and she will just take over for good. Or Crystal O'Keefe will say, hey, you know what? No more series previews. I'm just taking over the thing. Or Kristina, with the pass hanging around her neck, will be like, all right, I'm in the big chair. That cloud is gone. Anyhow,
We're coming for you.
We can wish, we can hope, and I can hope. And I won't even shed one tiny tear. Anyhow, thank you, Melissa, for being in there to cover for both days. And Kristina for your first day piece. Glad you had that experience. Super cool. Thanks again to White Sox for extending the invitation. We will always take them up, no matter what you invite us to, especially food. We never miss that one, Kristina.
We love that one. I love that one.
We're waiting for that one. We're waiting for that one this year. But thanks for listening, watching, reading us, of course, the Southside Sox and Sox Populi. We'll probably be back sooner than, I don't know, whatever. It's been a couple weeks. We just said goodbye to 2024 on the last one. So I guess it's been, I don't know, a month. Okay, I promise you it won't be a month. I'll show up reluctantly, and perhaps these two wonderful people will be showing up as well. But thanks for listening. As always, without all of you out there, there's no purpose for us being here. Although I just love chatting with Kristina and Melissa. So maybe we will. Hey, Southside Sox and Sox Populi goes away. We'll just get together. We'll chat. Probably not about the White Sox. So there. Anyhow, thanks to the both of you. Thanks for everybody listening. We'll be back at you. Definitely sooner than you want to hear from us again. But, you got no choice.